hurricane hype train has left the station. What's going on, guys? In today's video, we're going to talk all about the tropics, more specifically some of the crazy forecast model runs that are just floating around social media right now. And then, of course, we're going to break down what's actually going on out there and what some more likely scenarios are as we move over to the next 7 to 10 days in the tropical Atlantic. Stick around for the end for that. All right, guys, we tell it like it is on this channel. I, for one, hate hype. If you do too and just love talking about the weather and want to know what's going on with it, we would love to have you in this community. Please smash that subscribe button, hit the alert bell, and you'll be updated on all things weather. Let's get to it. Oh, GFS. The American GFS has been spitting out some crazy scenarios for a tropical wave that is entering the Eastern Caribbean. Stick around for a couple more minutes and I will show you exactly where that tropical wave is now and some more likely scenarios for it. Just to show you how out of whack the GFS has been, I'm going to show you one of these crazy model runs. This one from early Tuesday afternoon. And you see there's our projected storm, 990 millibar area of low pressure. Lower the number, the stronger the storm. Watch what happens. As we go forward in time over Cuba, over land, the pressure drops. There are some very tall mountains in this part of Cuba. This is not going to happen. The other thing, the GFS has been doing this all season long. If this forecast model would have been correct, we would have seen like 3 or 4 hurricanes in the Caribbean or Gulf of Mexico so far this season. To date, basin-wide, they're having a grand total of 0 hurricanes. Now, could some of these forecast model runs come into fruition? I'll never say never when it comes to the weather, but there are other things that I'm looking at that gives me more confidence in saying that it's going to be extremely unlikely. So this is the most updated run of the GFS ensembles. Remember, ensembles like a band, it's made up of many different members. There are different initial conditions to kind of give us a broad range here of the number of outcomes that could happen. You see here as we look towards August 28th, so a few days from now, there are a few L's popping up. So some of the members, only some of the members are biting that we could see a slightly developing storm. And it's very weak. The millibars are 1,007, 1,008, the pressure, not very low. So some good news again, relatively speaking. As we go further out in time, here we go on August 29th. That's the morning of the 29th. A few more members come on board, but there are only a few, and they are still very weak. A completely different scenario than that crazy, outlandish lone model run of the GFS. So when you see these lone model runs that have crazy scenarios or strong storms plastered all over social media, especially when they're 200 to 300 hours out from the model's runtime, it's likely not going to happen, and there's probably more to that story. I'm going to beat a dead horse on this one, guys. Here we go. We're looking at the European model run, the latest model run of the Euro. And you see it here on Monday, August 29th. Hardly an area of low pressure being picked up. You see it there pop up, a 1,009 millibar low. Very, very weak. There will be some kind of gray, nasty weather in and around the Cayman Islands, Jamaica, Cuba, the Dominican Republic, Haiti, and parts of the islands. Otherwise, there's nothing strong, and it barely has anything organizing. The European is not the only other model that shows this. Most operational forecast models we have are showing weak and slow development at best. So again, when you see the GFS model going nuts in the Caribbean, not really buying it at this point. Here is where our disturbance is right now. It's bringing some showery, gusty thunderstorms to the Lesser Antilles, the Leeward, Windward Islands, Martinique, Dominica, getting in on some of those gusty downpours and thunderstorms, Trinidad and Tobago as well. It's this cluster here, the cloud tops. Again, the brighter the color, the cooler the cloud tops, the more intense the thunderstorm activity, relatively speaking. Nonetheless, the system as a whole is very, very unorganized and is expected to take a long time to get its act together, and it may never do so. National Hurricane Center officially giving this entity a 20% shot to develop over the next 5 days, again in this yellow zone, so over the central and western Caribbean. Second wave we're going to be watching is just now emerging off of Africa, heading towards the Cabo Verde Islands. Again, there is the African continent there. Here is our disturbance working into that yellow shaded area that the Hurricane Center has defined as the development zone. I think this is ultimately going to have a better shot to develop, but the conditions out there are still pretty hostile. We still have some drier air involved. We still have some wind shear. And then we also have the broader thunderstorm activity known as the intertropical convergence zone. And that is hanging out right about here. It's that cluster of thunderstorms, really. It's the winds coming together from the northern and southern hemisphere and helps to enhance the thunderstorm activity. The wave is going to be intertwined in that giant cluster of thunderstorms. So until it can kind of remove itself from there, it's really going to have a tough time to develop. I do think a more likely scenario is going to be beyond that 5-day period that the Hurricane Center has highlighted, closer to its time towards the leeward or windward islands. So here's what I'm talking about. This is the ensemble forecast, the European ensembles, and we're looking for the cluster. Again, a cluster of L's, not just an individual L. That's where the certain member of the ensemble is putting the storm, but we're looking for the cluster of L's, and you see most of the ensembles here of the European do develop it, or at least something very weak as we get out towards August 30th. Going out forward in time, you see more of those L's pushing into the central and western Atlantic as we move towards early September. So there we go on September 2nd, a bunch of L's in a strengthening system there, at least according to the European ensembles, moving in towards parts of the Leeward Islands, maybe even into the extreme southwest Atlantic. Another giant cluster of L's moving off of the African continent here as we get into the first couple of days of September. We're in the period now, climatologically speaking, where we do see several of these thunderstorm complexes rolling off of Africa with a chance to develop, given that the environmental conditions are favorable for development. That's going to be the question mark. I do think we're going to have the thunderstorm activity there, so that's something we're going to be watching closely as we move forward into the first week of September. Again, this is the peak of hurricane season. We do have some extra forcing, some large-scale forcing moving through that region, which will help to enhance the thunderstorm activity. Again, I do think the thunderstorms will be there. It's just the question of how conducive will the Atlantic be. We're in the period now, climatologically speaking, where we do see several of these thunderstorm complexes rolling off of Africa with a chance to develop, given that the environmental conditions are favorable for development. That's going to be the question mark. I do think we're going to have the thunderstorm activity there, so that's something we're going to be watching closely as we move forward into the first week of September. Alrighty guys, I hope you found this video informative. If you did, please share it with your friends. Please subscribe to this channel. We would love to have you. Also smash that little alert bell there. Anytime we put new content on here, you're going to get notified. You're going to be up to date with the weather. And again, informed without the clickbaity stuff that is right now all over social media. Again, we are heading into the peak of hurricane season. There are signs that this switch could be flipping a little bit, especially with those waves I showed you coming off of Africa. Still, though, the Atlantic, not that conducive to development in the short term. We're going to be watching things closely, and we're going to have updates posted on this channel. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll catch you next time.